Greetings, my name is Tiffany Harden, and today I will be observing a Silsbee ISD board meeting. The demographics of the district is as follows. We have a total amount of 2,708 students across 4 campuses. We have our primary campus, which is made up of pre-K and kindergarten, elementary, first grade through fifth grade. The middle school serves our sixth through eighth grade, and then of course our high school has 9th through 12th graders. The makeup of these groups is we have 17% African American, 8.7% Hispanic, 67% white, 0.3% Asian, and 5.9% two or more races. Faculty, there's a total of 404 faculty members, which is a makeup of 3.1% African American, 3.3% Hispanic, 93.5% white, and 0.5% Asian. The ranges from beginning of the year to over 20 years of experience is what our district has. And during this board meeting, I am looking forward to observing information about the tax refund. Also, we will be getting ESSA updates from our superintendent. We will discuss House Bill 3 reports end of the year for reading and math for our elementary and primary campuses. And then also our House Bill end of the year reports for our CCMR by our Director of Principals. During this meeting, they will also be discussed the district-wide intruder detector and its findings. This report will be given by our superintendent. Action items for approval. There's a list of action items all the way from Disney trips approval to sporting events, basketball tournaments that will be getting approval for those items during this board meeting. During this board meeting, I expect to learn the process of how the board meeting is ran. I will be looking for how decisions are brought to the board and how they come to a conclusion and to vote on those decisions that make our campus and our district better and for the success of our students. That's what I will be looking for during this meeting, as well as the actions of the superintendent during this meeting.
It's 7:02. Quorum is established. Let the record reflect that Daryl Ferguson is absent from the meeting tonight. At this time, we'll have our prayer led by Bo Rulon, and our pledges will be led by Tom Hardy. Would everyone rise?
Good Lord, I want to thank you, Father, for allowing us together tonight, Father, and just want to thank you, Father, for this group of people, Father, that's come together to better our school district, dear Lord. Just pray now, Father, that you'll help the decisions that are made here tonight, Father, to be in your will. And we just thank you, Father, for everything that you've done for us. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. I don't see that we have any visitors. No one for public forum. Always good to have our staff here. Coach, glad to have y'all here tonight too as well. All right. Board members, your attendance and enrollment data is on board book. Hope you've had a chance to look that over. At this time, we'll move on to item 6, our consent action agenda. You see there we have another long list of tax refunds. So people are going and contesting their taxes, so I guess that's a good thing, bad for us. But anyway, Chair calls for a motion on our consent action.
Madam President, I make a motion we approve the consent action agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Hardy. Need a second? Seconded by Mrs. Smith. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 7, our ESSER update. No update at this time. Item 8, our reports from our superintendent. Dr. Weeks. Thank you, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Get everything up and going and,
I see there's not been much change.
yeah, we've been pretty consistent.
You see those graphs? I can see the shape of the chair, like it went up, and it went down.
So this is the year in conclusion. I do want to point out some things that we have reported on in the past, at this meeting. The House Bill 3 intended purpose for reading was also to include a dyslexia at-risk indicator, so I'm going to share with you some of our findings from that as well.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I don't understand.
Nope.
That's going off.
You still have the touch.
All right, so we'll start with our early childhood reading results. We're gonna look at our pre-K, our CLI reports. This is based off of phonological awareness. At the beginning of the year, this year, we started at 33% of our students were on track for being phonologically aware, to ending with 71%. Our end of year goal was 60% to be on track, so we blew the top off of it. Massive growth compared to last year. For kindergarten, there's not a mid-year test for listening comprehension. Our end of year goal was 75%. We started with 61 and up to 75. We hit our goal. We made more growth than we did in prior years, so looking pretty good there. First grade, this is the only spot where we did not hit our goal. We had an end of year goal for reading comprehension at 60% and we had 50%. Our growth was not what it was last year, so we did still see goal. In comparison to our reading fluency rate for first grade, this is where we started the year. 85% of our kids were coming in without being able to read. There was a frustrational level, and 6% of our kids came in reading at 60 words a minute. By mid-year, that number cut down quite a bit on those who were frustrational, and then end of year, well over half of our kids are past that frustrational level. 20% of our kids are reading 60 words a minute. So they are becoming more fluent readers, which is the next step in getting to that comprehension level.
So where does that fall with past years?
This is pretty similar to last year's. I think last year we were at 42% were still frustrational,
Okay.
and 18 or 19% at the 60 words per minute.
Okay, so
It's pretty
similar.
similar.
Okay.
So the House Bill 3 looks at the dyslexia indicator for kindergarten and first grade. Kindergarten, we were required to have them screened by the, May 31st, so we had 181 kindergartners screened, 33 of them were identified at risk. What we do with that data is up to us. Those 33 students are going to be put into RTI reading labs as soon as the school year begins. For first grade, we had, their deadline to be screened is February 1st. So 199 first graders were screened, 43 of them were identified at risk. From there, we go into the assessment process to see if they are dyslexic. So we had 43 assessed screened at risk. 19 of them were referred for dyslexia testing. 5 had already been in the middle of their referral process. 7 were already previously identified as SPED and are receiving services. 5 not referred already in the RTI process and have been showing growth throughout the RTI process. They've been going through the reading lab and they're showing growth without much indication of dyslexia. 7 were not referred at the time, but they were put into accelerated instruction and they targeted those low performing skills. 4 of those kids did show major improvement by the end of the year. 3 have not, so they have since been referred since that February 1st screening requirement. Of the 19 kids who were referred for testing, 11 have qualified under special ed. 1 student did not qualify. 3 did not qualify, but they do for three did not qualify for dyslexia, but they have qualified for special ed, special learning disabilities, under something else. 1 student withdrew, 2 parents refused testing, and 1 is still waiting to give us, or has not given us their consent. They verbally consented, but they have not signed the appropriate waivers. So the ones that were saying, yes, we need to test these kids, they're coming out and saying, yes, they have dyslexia or some type of learning disability.
So the kindergarten kids, nothing happens there at
No,
this point,
We
right?
just have to have a monitor on those
Okay,
kids.
okay.
So they will
And
be
then
starting
next year
labs.
they'll do this
Right.
other process.
Those names have already been reported to our RTI coordinator. She's got labs ready to go for them and ready to get them started. All the data's been shared over. The downfall with the CLI program, CLI, once the year is over, all the data is wiped out of the system. And so we can't go back and find it unless we download it and export it to all these other places. And, so we did that, the last day of school, I was sending reports to go home and getting all that stuff taken care of, and everything went to the RTI coordinator, so that's all taken care of. We can get those 33 and capture them soon. And then continue with reading comprehension, I want to say big, huge kudos to our second grade teachers, Ms. Patterson, Ms. Benefield, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Marshall, and Ms. Steiner. They have made tremendous growth, almost 30% improvement in their reading comprehension, well above what our growth was last year. Our end of year goal was 75%, we hit 82%. So it's tremendous. They did an excellent job. They took that Reading Horizons material and they ate it up. You should see their planning process. It's wonderful. So they've done a tremendous job. To remind you how their reading fluency went from beginning of the year, 35% of the kids, 36% of the kids came in frustrational in their reading comprehension. Mid-year, it dropped down to about 30%. And at the end of the year, only 16% of our kids are still frustrational.
That's great.
That's about what our percentage of dyslexic students are as well. So,
That's good.
not saying that all of them, that's who they are, but just gives me an indication. So they're doing a tremendous job there. Our end of year, third grade NWEA, we grew 14 points in our overall RIT performance. The average RIT score growth for third grade is 12. So we grew more than the national average. That's according to the 2019 NWEA standard. So the pre-COVID growth were better than what the pre-COVID growth average score was. And our beginning of the year breakdown of STAR projections compared to our end of year STAR projections. So we're looking at about 73% will be at approaches are better. Of those approaches are better, what is that, about 40%? I can't even math today. 38, 39% at the meets grade level. I couldn't think of the term, meets grade level. Now moving on to math. For our CLI for pre-K, our end of year goal was 90%. We hit 91%. We had a 20-point growth compared to last year's 5-point growth. For math, I'm going to be completely honest with you, it was really 59.6%. I rounded it up to 60, which was our end of year goal. So kindergarten math is one of my focal areas for next year. We met our growth, but we could do better. But we still had a lot more growth than what we had last year as well. The first grade NWEA math growth, our end of year goal was a RIT score of 171. We had 172, so we've surpassed our goal. Second grade, 189 was our goal. We hit it right on the head. 189 is our overall math for second grade. And our end of year goal, we didn't have a goal for third grade, but our end of year average was 201. That's the national average. And we had 3 more point growth than what I think it was 3 points more than what the national average growth was. So looking at our projected proficiency at the beginning of the year compared to the end of the year. So we're at 69, about 69% at approaches or better for the projected proficiency on STAR for the end of the year. So recap of our goals. This is what our goals look like when we set them at the beginning of the year. We met all of our goals except for first grade reading. Surpassed our goals for second grade especially. Those teachers did a phenomenal job. We won't know for the third grade until TEA decides to tell us how we did.
Yeah.
So moving forward, first grade reading, we know that is a hot spot area. We have 12 first grade teachers, 6 of them were brand new to first grade this year. That could have been an indicator, but there's some definite need for professional development in that area. For kindergarten math, one of the areas I wanted to focus on, we did spend some time right at the beginning of the summer, working on our pacing calendars and making sure that what the instruction was is specifically what the TEKS were. There were some things that we needed to shave off that weren't what they needed to be teaching. Also, the early literacy screener, we've been using TPRI for first and second grade and CLI for pre-K and kindergarten. That's on the commissioner's list. The commissioner released, beginning of the year last year, we can use M-Class also. So we finished this year with TPRI and CLI, and the teachers unanimously voted for M-Class coming up this next year. And that would work for kindergarten through second grade. It is more aligned, so we can see how the cohorts are growing. Right now, kindergarten to first grade, those tests are not comparable. So we can't see how the growth is from grade level to grade level. This way we can, all of those scores will automatically upload into DMAC, so we can track the students however long they're here. So that was one of the moves that the teachers have requested. With that in mind, M-Class does not have a math component that CLI does. So, for first and second grade, we used NWEA. That would be the goal for kindergarten next year, we use NWEA as well. We've been consistently growing. We grew 12 points last year and this year in our RIT score. I would like to get it up to 13 or 14 points, but that's on the horizon.
So would that make it more, like you were talking about with the other, what do you call it?
It's more, they're
Aligned
aligned, we
across
can
grade
see,
levels?
yes, we can see every test that a kid takes on NWEA, it's the same test, no matter what grade level they are, it's based on the student's skills, so we can see where they're
So
growing.
you'll be able to see that.
Right. Right, there's lots more longitudinal data there. And then this year, we're really gonna focus in on those kindergarten at-risk students when they get to first grade. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I do.
Yes, sir.
All right, so if we're gonna use projected star data, you're checking almost every box on your intermediate goals. But that's not correlating to getting to our goals on the STAR test.
Right, with the
In the
60%.
60%. I mean, you grew, I assume 35 was last year's STAR data, so we grew 3.2% on reading using the projected, not the actual STAR test, I get that. So if you're at 38, you're still over 20% away from reaching goal,
Right.
where all of our goals are met on intermediate. So are our goals not high enough on those, or are we not looking at the right data? And then in the math, you went from 25 to 33, which that's a good jump in 1 year. I'm not saying that's not a great jump in 1 year, but we're still a long way from 60. So I would challenge us to, to say, one, are we setting our intermediate goals right? And I get that there's a lag there, because we're looking at, you're looking at pre-K, you're looking at kindergarten and first grade, and maybe the groundwork's been laid and it's going to show up in the next couple of years. But it doesn't, at least on the initial analysis of the data, it doesn't just totally go, what we're looking at looks great in all our intermediate goals, but the projected star is still lagging.
Yeah, the 26-point growth by the end of next year it seems pretty lofty.
Right,
But again, this is based off of what the state is saying we need to get to.
correct.
And all in the middle of this, they changed the test. So we still have that goal until they come in and say, with the new assessment, we need to make adjustments. That's where our hands are pretty much tied there. Now, our focus in PLCs have been on the meets grade level, because for so long, the conversation has been centered around approaches. I got my kid to passing, and that's great, but that's not what you want. Approaches is still just barely getting to your grade level proficiency. So we've shifted our conversation within our PLCs so that they understand approaches is good, but not great, not what we want. So I think realigning the teacher's focus is going to help us get there. But again, we're still kind of flying blindfolded without knowing where those cut scores are gonna be and how they're gonna roll it out.
Is there any data between the projected STAR test that kids are taking and actual STAR results
Last
from the
year's NWEA, last year was the first year we had NWEA, and those projected proficiency standards, were within 2 percentage points, some a little higher, some a little lower, so it's very, very close. Now, the student by student,
Sure.
when you look at it, it wasn't as cut and dry, but the overall percentage was very, very close for all grade level, all content areas. So, fingers crossed.
Any other questions? Comments? The only thing I would like is if you could have that sent to us, so that I can look at it. It is already, okay. My iPad is, I didn't get a chance to.
I do have documents, I can share with you that has all of the data by student demographics, because we're looking at all that also, I can share it another way also.
And I can add it on there.
Okay, yes, please, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody's been reading the agenda, he knows he's next.
Oh, shoot. I try to hurry things along.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All righty. Looking at our House Bill 3 board goals, for our CCMR, I just want to quickly start off reminding us about, where the state said we needed to be was 60% by 2024. With this year's graduates, we should be at 55%. And you guys said, you know what, we're going to raise the bar a little bit and stretch our high school principal just a little bit, see what we can do, which is great because we have done a tremendous job. So we decided, 2023, up that to 64%, and 2024, you go, 10% higher than what the state is wanting us to do, and go to 70% in 2024. So when we look at this, keep in mind that, from 2022, we had 184 graduates. In 2023, we had 158 graduates. So we dipped in, as far as our graduating classes last year. So when we start looking at raw numbers, the raw numbers might be a little bit smaller just in relation to those graduating classes. So right now, where we are, and I do say right now, because we still have some things that are out there. So right now, where we are, we're at 61%. But look at that 2022, we ended up at 66%, which is phenomenal when you look at 2021 at 47%. You're making almost a whole 20% gain in that 1 year. And sometimes you get to be the victim of your own success because the next year we're right at a 61. Now, we still have some things that are out there. I'll cover that when we get through some of these numbers here in just a little bit. And then as you look at the 2024, we're at 47%, and that is a very early number right now. That is a very early number as far as the students in that next year's graduating class. So moving forward, we'll look at our C number special. There we go. I didn't know he had that on the delay there. That's all right. This is our special ed grad. Here's one place where we looked at, and we said, you know, we slipped a little bit. And we really wanted to analyze what the issue was when we went from 21 to 11 and 23. And there's two ways you can get your special ed marble, if you will. One way is you can have kids that are on a modified curriculum, and they go through Opportunity Now, and they complete that work program, and then the state says they are CCMR ready. If you're not on a modified curriculum, not on a modified program, you have accommodations and that is it. So you're in a least restrictive environment or a less restrictive environment, then you have to get your endorsement. So it gets to be very detail oriented with our kids. And we want to do what's the best for our kids, for our special ed kids, as we always do. But sometimes when you get a kid in special ed, and Ms. Smith will probably say amen to this, so you're trying to work those kids to a least restrictive environment. And they could start off in the 9th grade in a very restricted and have modifications, and as we go through the 4 years, by the time they graduate, they're going to be in the least restricted. They're going to have accommodations, but this kid started off very restricted, and then by the time they graduate, well, when they get these numbers for CCMR, they go by the senior accommodations or modifications only, and what those identification systems are. So in a sense, if we satisfy the PBMAS regulations and say, we're moving all these kids to the least restrictive environment, sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot with our CCMR. And so when we looked at that, we're going, oh boy. So we're doing real well in one thing, but then we kind of shoot our toes off with the CCMR. So that's one thing we're really going to pay a lot of attention. Number one, take care of our kids. Make sure our kids are being challenged in the appropriate setting. But number two, we got to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's with this to make sure that we can get the full amount that we can with our CCMR at the end of the year when those kids are coded for PINGs. Does that make sense? I wanted to, that's one area that was, that kind of went down, but when we started looking at it, Andrew and I both, when we came to the realization, we looked at each other and went, oh, well, this is very interesting. So the state does us some favors in some things, and in some things they set us up to kick ourselves in the rear end in another way. So that's one of the things.
Sounds
that
like you
we
just have to
look
walk
at.
that little fine line.
You do.
Yeah.
And really, like we said, the number one thing, take care of your kids.
Yes.
Make sure we got them in appropriate settings. But then also make sure that when we look at how we record these and how, and I'll tell you this, it's really funny, you'll have a sheet, a whole sheet of a flow chart that determines how these kids are ranked in the CCMR. But you actually, if yes, you go here, if no, you go here, then you come back. It's interesting. It's interesting. Should have brought that as a show and tell. So that's one area that I think we really need to focus on. Right now, we have a question mark because until the kids are coded their senior year, we don't really know how many we're going to have that's going to count in the very end. Looking at our next thing, looking at SAT and ACT. One of the things that and I think I've mentioned this before to you guys, a big challenge we have with our kids moving forward is SAT and ACT are not valued by colleges anymore. They're not really requiring them to even take it. So when we get kids, sometimes let's say you're a kid that takes Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. Well, now you gotta take one of these tests to satisfy for your Algebra 1 high school EOCs. That's the way they're keeping that into some accountability. Well, these kids know, hey, I've already taken this, I'm good to go in my college, I've already got, it's not keeping me from graduating, all I have to do is take it. So the motivation factor is not very high, even when they have to take it. You know, remember back when you were a teenager, you'd count on, hey, you mean I just gotta take this? Oh, I just gotta take it, okay. So those are some things that was a little bit of a challenge for us. In order to get counted for CCMR, you gotta have a required score. With your SAT, you have to have a 480 on the reading and the writing and a 530 on the math. And then you have to have a 23 in the ACT composite. So you can't just go in there and do a bare minimum of the job of those tests. And, you know, some people, Miss Erin Smith said, well, you know, this is the way they're going to get some scholarships. Well, that's true, but you look at this class who only had 17 that met the requirement. This class that just graduated in 2023, 58 students received scholarships, and there was over $1.4 million given out to them. Mm-hmm. And it's not hurting them in the scholarship, obviously, because those kids did a heck of a job getting scholarships for continued education. So that's a challenge we got to really see. Now, the good news is, you look at the class of 2024, they're already at 23, they already have that score. So, might be one of those things, kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Next thing we're going to look at, number of students fulfilling dual credit requirements.
I gotta interrupt you for just a second.
Not a problem.
So, if the algebra, 8th grade algebra 1, there's no way to administer an EOC for that class so that you don't lose that?
They do. They have the 8th grade algebra 1 is taken at the 8th grade. And then that score goes in for the junior high at the algebra 1. Does that make sense? They take
So
the algebra
the
1.
SAT score is replacing EOC for
Yes.
8th grade algebra 1?
Yes.
While
Yeah.
in high school.
While in high school. They have to take it. They have to take that test if they did the algebra 1 over at the 8th grade.
So they have to take a math test while attending the high school.
Correct.
No way, I guess there's no way to work around and let, take
What's-
the EOC once they're freshmen.
Once they take that EOC as an eighth grade, it's just like taking that credit. You can't go and take the Algebra 1 as a high school student. You've already taken it in the eighth grade, so once you've done it, you got that high school credit, but you did it at the eighth grade, which means the EOC is taken, and you're done with it.
How many students take the Algebra 1 in eighth grade?
How many we got right now? Algebra 1
We had
students?
about around 60 or
Yeah.
70.
Is that how many you're gonna take it next year?
I can't, I don't know offhand for next year, but that's how many we had this
So about a
past
third of your students take it in eighth grade.
It's been like that probably the past 5 years, around 60.
We put some developments in there,
Right.
qualifications
Right.
around that.
What, yeah,
That's
maybe
been
a
the
little
process.
more stringent.
Well,
What would be the downfall to not, I mean, if you're taking a hit on CCMR for that, what would be the downfall? Would it be, is it scheduling, not being able to take a higher level math, like the pre-cal, and to not offering that at the eighth grade level if you're gonna be punished for it?
correct. Originally, schools started putting in Algebra 1 so that kids could take one math a year and get to calculus. And that way they'd have a path of eighth grade Algebra 1, geometry, then they could do Algebra 2, pre-cal, and then calculus. And that way you're just taking 4. If you did Algebra 1 as a freshman, you're gonna have to double up on the math somewhere in there to get to that calculus. Because it's gonna be very hard not to be able to take calculus without pre-cal. So in order to accelerate, the answer was to move that Algebra 1 to the eighth grade year. So then, as you start looking at it, well, this is the bridge that they need to cross to get to calculus. More and more parents said, well, hey, I want my kid to be advanced too. I want my kid to take that Algebra 1. And then it became more of an advanced type of measure. And is it really one of those things that, hey, we want to do this so my kid has a chance to take calculus?
Okay, so how many students are taking advantage of that in their senior year and taking the real calculus?
Calculus, we have a pretty good number next year. I want to say it's in the teens. A lot of times you'll be doing good if you can have about 10 in the class for calculus.
So 60 are taking algebra in eighth grade, but that's paring down to only less than 20. A third of those are actually taking advantage of it.
Also, the
No.
STEM endorsement is 5 math credits.
The what's
The
that?
STEM endorsement is 5 math credits. So if you wanted to do a STEM endorsement, you'd almost have to do algebra in eighth grade as well. And that doesn't mean you have to do calculus, you can take statistics.
Okay. There's other pathways.
Right.
There's
I
other
got you.
pathways.
Okay. Just trying to get my head wrapped around.
Right. It is tricky also to be able to talk to kids, talk to parents about, hey, this is an advanced measure. Sometimes though, especially with all the tests that have been crammed down the last few years with math, it's a lot for a junior high kid whose brain might not be developed totally to that area yet, to take that in some cases. And so, you get some kids that will try to take that advanced measure, go very fast, do pretty well, but then by the time they get up to high school, sometimes we see some gaps with math skills. And that's something we've got to watch too. And so a kid can get up there and get ready to go and they're doing fairly well in algebra 2, but when it comes to pre-cal, oh my goodness, then the gaps start really showing the further they go.
We've been changing that in the junior high level, not somebody can go from the seventh grade, we might do a seventh grade math curriculum, as opposed to going into algebra 1 already, because they didn't meet the qualifications to be in.
Yes, and we are seeing the improvements, and that's one of the things that we've looked at through high school.
Thank you.
No problem. Number of students fulfilling dual credit requirements. If you look at these numbers at 56, for our class of 23, it was 52, which if you look at percentage-wise, for the number of graduates we had, that's really a percentage that is higher. And if you look at the 49 that's in 2024, that's really good. So one of the things that we keep in mind, to get this marble for dual credit to meet the requirement, you have to have 3 hours for each just for a core class. 3 hours coming from a core class, you meet this requirement. And then if you have 9 hours from a non-core class, you meet this requirement. So if you start looking at some of the things that we've done with LIT, as far as free welding dual credits for all the kids that take welding, we're starting to see this kicking in with the 9 hours with these kids. So that's very important. And looking at criminal justice, we're going to go back to LIT. I'm not stopping. We're going to see what else we might can partner with them to get the technical dual credit. Because once that kid gets those 9 hours, they are good to go and they get their marble. But it also gives them a great background and a springboard for the future as well. So another thing the state did help us out with House Bill 18 is the FAST program, and that is a free dual credit to economically disadvantaged children. So if they're not in ECHS and they're economically disadvantaged, now they can sign up for any kind of dual credit. We report those kids to LIT, and then those kids can take anything from English, the English dual credits to whatever it might be that they want to take. PTAC can be a great one for them. So that is a door that we can really take advantage of and kick through. We have to talk to LIT to see the devils in the details, but we're going to talk to LIT this summer and make sure we have these details worked out so our kids can take advantage of this. So that's going to be something that will pay off for us. And then looking at a number of students obtaining IBCs or level 1, level 2 certifications. Right now, we have 60 in the class of 2022. Wonderful. Right now, we sit at 43. Now, we do have, for instance, 6 kids that are taking the education IBC. That they're taking it, they have to turn 18. So this is given over the summer. So this is why this data is always 1 year lagging. Because a kid can go take a TSI and pass that TSI over the summer, and it would still count for us. So that's why you look at all these things in a 1 year lagging data, so that these kind of things can count for us for the certifications and for the CCNMR. So if those 6 were to pass, that number could go on up to 49, which puts us more level with our percentages from last year's 2022 with a bigger class and the 2023 with a little bit of a smaller class. If you look at 2024, they're already up at 54. So that's very good. So they're on pace right now to eclipse that 60 number, I believe. So looking at that, I feel like that's pretty strong. We also retooled some of our classes. For instance, with our nursing, we're not doing the CNA program, we're doing patient care tech, which gives us multiple ways to get kids IBCs. Anywhere from phlebotomy to other things with a patient care tech. So it's a little bit easier, and we can get a little more kids to get that marble, so it widens our opportunities with that. And there's some other things that we're looking at, trying to work it. I know OSHA 30 is a big one. That now is, they're not counting anymore. That's in the, I want to say, the sundown phase. I don't want to say sundowner, it sounds a little weird, sunsetting phase. But they're phasing that out right now. So we're wanting to make sure that we're planning for the future and making sure that we get kids IBCs that will count for the future, and that will be very broad. Anything on that?
Just so that there's reference to the numbers, your class of 2024, how many students is that?
2024, that is 193.
So another big class.
Right now, it's going to be up there. Typically, that number by the time graduation hits will go down some. I don't know how much, but we're basing all of our numbers and figures off of 193 right now.
So 2024 is really close to 2022 as far as
Correct.
projected
Correct.
about class size.
That's correct.
Thank
Any other questions you might have?
What was the class size of 22? What was?
Class size of 22 is 180.
Okay.
$184.
Okay,
And then 2023 was 158.
thank you.
Okay. And then kind of summing up a little bit of what we're looking at for next year, because 70, that's a stretch, man. I love it. I love shooting high. Let's see how far we can go, because that's 10% higher than what the state is putting. And right now, we're stretching ourselves because we're hitting some of that plateau area right now, and you're not going to see that big 20% jump that we saw earlier 2 years ago. So what we're looking at right now, you're thinking 47% is a long way from 70. You work backwards, and what we're looking at is 45 students. We got to look at 45 more students, some way, somehow, and that puts us safely over. That counts. I'm counting the 193, and I'm rounding up. So that class will probably go down, so maybe not, whatever. But if we look at it, and if we just do some speculation, an example of what we need to look at is our special ed population. We can get 20, like what we had the year before. That puts us halfway there. That puts us halfway there. If we can get, now, remember military, the M is back in place now. So the military is counting again. So typically, we do about 3 to 4 military. We didn't have any last year, but typically we do about 3 to 4. So if we can get 5 kids in the military, if we can go to our IBCs, squeeze out about 10 more IBCs.
This is a reflection of the board meeting that I had the opportunity to observe. The meeting was called to order at 7:02 p.m. It was scheduled for 7 o'clock p.m. The board president called the meeting to order. We were asked to stand for the prayer led by one of the board members. We remained standing for the pledges also led by one of the board members. The meeting was ran by the board president. The superintendent sat with the board, and he followed the president's lead. The agenda was followed thoroughly the entire meeting. The board used a constant action, and none of these actions were pulled from the agenda. There were no visitors recognized, and no one signed up for the public forum today. Other than the superintendent, there were 5 other staff members involved. We had the assistant superintendent. We had the director of business and finance. That was part of the board sitting up there. We also had the administrative assistant of the superintendent there. And there were 2 presentations, one given by the director of elementary education and another by the principal, high school principal. We also had a coach, the athletic director, there for their portion to make an explanation on one of the action items. No students were recognized since it is the summertime. We had no students that were recognized for any activity or sport. The board went into executive session at 8:02 p.m. During this executive session, the superintendent was back there with them. We waited in the area. They came back out at 8:42 p.m. The meeting was called back to order from the closed session. For the presentation, this information was projected on screens. And the audience had and the board had board books. So those were the technology pieces that were used during this board meeting. The board book has everything on it from agendas to presentations. Everything is uploaded there so the board, along with the superintendent, can follow along as there are presentations and as they're going through all of the consent actions. The meeting was not recorded. The administrative assistant did take notes, as well as the board secretary took minutes. While preparing for the House Bill 3 presentation that was supposed to be projected on the screen, there was some technical issues, but they did correct those, and everything continued to flow well, and we proceeded on with the meeting. The meeting was adjourned at 8:58 p.m. After the board meeting, many of the members were they came into the audience, they shook our hands along with the superintendent, just greeting us and telling us thank you for being a part of the meeting after it was adjourned. This meeting flowed well, I feel, and it gave me the opportunity to see the actions of the superintendent and his role in the board. I had the chance to also get an understanding of what decisions and what actions the board actually decides on. And this was a very eye-opening experience for me, being able to see the superintendent in action. What surprised me about this meeting was I did not know that from coming into this that sporting events such as going to basketball tournaments, which was one of the presentations that was given by the athletic director, that they have to get approval from the board in order to go to out-of-state trips. I didn't know that, but I did learn that tonight because it was something that the board did have to vote on. One thing that from this experience, I just feel like it, like I said earlier, it was eye-opening. I got a chance to see the superintendent in action. I learned a lot. I learned the decisions that come before the board and that the board is really the driving force, including the superintendent, but the majority of decisions do go before the board, and it's the superintendent's job when they're going down all these different things for approval for the superintendent to have knowledge of those things and be able to explain everything more in depth before our board actually gets those approvals that's looking for. I enjoyed having this opportunity, and I look forward to more in the future.